What started as a simple rescue soon turns into a terrible nightmare. It was the event that would change Soul's life forever. So a D-rank rescue hunter from the Bureau of Hunters is the expert you call when fellow hunters get trapped in a dangerous dungeon. On one mission, he and his team stepped into a dungeon thinking it was just a normal rescue job. But the situation turns deadly when ghouls block their way out. Using his special sense, Soul finds a new path that leads them straight into a deadly zone of monsters. And when the team is completely overwhelmed, Soul realizes a necromancer is pulling the strings from the shadows. He makes a last-ditch effort by shoving his friends out of the magic circle and staying behind to seal their fate. All by himself, he steps in the dungeon to fight the boss who tries to turn him into a ghoul. Just as Soul was about to lose everything, he pushed his last bit of strength to find an exit and stumbled upon a strange monument that offered him a secret role known as the Architect of Labyrinth. With nothing left to lose, he steps into a maze that tests his new awakening and forces him to fight for his powerful new life. That's when the labyrinth clearing begins, and with only 30 minutes left and 4 ghouls to kill, the system announces he's just leveled up. This makes him realize he has to work faster. The tutorial was going well, and he easily grabbed a weapon from one of the monsters lying on the ground. After that, he used his map-making skills to find and destroy most of the monsters, making the whole mission feel like an easy win that he was certain to finish on time. But everything changed when a huge monster began chasing him. But he felt sure he could manage it, since unlike the tiny fries, this one had to travel all by itself. Knowing it would take too long to fight the giant, Sayo chose to wipe out all the smaller monsters first, so he could save his time for the big one. Just as he was ready to keep chasing, a smaller one came right up to help him out. But right as So was about to finish it, a giant monster popped out of nowhere, joined by the last 3 small ghouls. What shocked him was that he hadn't even felt them move together as one, all because his rush check of the map had led him straight into this huge disaster. Sayo takes a breath to steady himself and figure out his next move, only to realize he can only fight 2 ghouls at a time. He grabs a plan, but finding himself trapped, he must charge headlong through them, only to realize too late that every move has been calculated and he is completely checkmated. Sho's resolve starts to waver as his shame over being a lowly hunter gnaws away at his mind. But as the monsters lunged at him, he refused to give up despite being outmatched, reminding himself this was just a tutorial meant to help him. So he shouted at the system to act like a proper servant and find a way out since he didn't accept this task just to be Gol Chow. Just then, Soul's sixth sense kicks in. Just as he gets ready to fight the monsters, the system pops up a new idea. He can spin blocks by linking his sixth sense skill with a map function. As soon as the skill is connected to the map, the system buzzes him repeatedly, urging him to use the spin block ability while he navigates through it. Shoei quickly spins the block on his map, discovering he can now rotate the dungeon walls to rearrange them. So just as monsters reach for him, he hits spin to trap them on a different side and leaves the ghouls utterly confused. With just one monster left, Sayo grins, happy to see how well her new trick works. He spins the block a few times to split the monsters apart, then hunts them down one by one. Before he knew it, he had taken down 3 of them. After that, Seal darts in to easily crush the giant beast, but reality slams into him hard when the monster grabs him like a sandwich. But Seal won't let that defeat stand. Just like a boss breaking free, he strikes once and sends the giant ghoul flying. The system instantly shouts that the tutorial is over and shifts our new role to Labyrinth Architect. He also unlocks the King of the Labyrinth power, so every ghoul he defeats becomes one of his own labyrinth monsters. The system then suggests heading back to a safe place. Outside the dungeon, Li-Han keeps begging to go back for his friend, but his teammates hold him back, fearing the other might have already been eaten by the beast. Plus, the dungeon gate is gone, trapping him with no way to return. But much to their surprise, he strolls in eating a popsicle and even offers them one to cool down their overheated brains. So after clocking out from work, he heads to the park and summons the Sphere, a special power that traps his enemies in a maze from the outside. The Sphere can hold enemies tight, but the system warns Seo they can break free by beating the Labyrinth boss, and anyone who defeats that boss will instantly get a massive power boost. Suil holds back from tossing his foes around carelessly, choosing to think things through first. He also points out that the Sphere is invisible to everyone else, making it much simpler for him to use. So he makes a plan to pack his maze with tougher monsters, knowing they'll be his secret weapon when he faces powerful foes later on. But the only way to enter the maze is to fight its monsters, force them to obey him with his special king skill. So he knows he must get stronger to face them on his own. While lost in thought, his neighbor's daughter Yeonhee brings him a large bag of apples from her mom. And though he is surprised by such a generous gift, she assures him that the store always has leftovers and he can take them for sure. On the way home, Co asks Yonhee how school is, and she says it's fine even though you can tell she's feeling uncomfortable. Then, they freeze in their tracks as a woman starts making a huge scene right in front of the hotel. She begs the police frantically to let her pass because her daughter is still trapped inside the hotel. Yonhee studied the hotel carefully and noted it wasn't actually on fire, so she was told it was a dungeon break, an event where neglected gates let monsters escape into our world. So Yonhee gets the apples with a promise to take them back later, and when he asks why, the hunter says he has to do his job in the rescue team. But just as So tries to rush into the hotel, a policeman stops him. So he shows his ID to prove he works for the rescue team, but the officer doesn't believe him because he's all alone, and even though he explains that his crew is coming soon, the officer still stops him, warning that the hotel is overrun by a pack of red goblins. So refuses to go with anyone else, determined to rush in alone because he knows a little girl is trapped inside. The officer keeps trying to reason with him, but Soy shrugs him off boldly since he knows he's not alone. And though he feels let down that the Hanel Guild left dangerous gates unguarded because they thought they were safe, he quickly activates his special sense inside the hotel to feel the red goblins hiding in the dark, calls them out, and watches them swarm toward him like flies before he instantly sucks them all into his sphere to watch them like a boss, knowing the old him would have struggled to handle them. While the Labyrinth King lounges in comfort, letting his monsters handle the work, Sayo watches from afar as his minions hunt a red goblin that suddenly freezes in the hallway, even though these ordinary creatures are far sneakier than typical goblins. Just when the ghoul thinks he's won, the crafty goblin grins evilly as his friends pop out from the dark. Just as they are about to grab the ghoul, Seal smashes a wall into its face, letting it slip away. He then checked the maze and found that the goblins had used their tricks to clear out his minions. Yule realizes he must keep a close watch because too many red goblins have been pulled into the labyrinth. Despite all their clever tricks, he reminds them that their pieces are just tiny pawns on his chessboard while he holds the true power as the game master. He then climbs to the 17th floor and finally finds the little girl, Somi, hiding there. He promises her they are safe, and as they leave, Somi asks if he really killed all the goblins alone, to which he admits he did, though he knows the ghoul actually did most of the heavy lifting. Even so, it still counts as him doing it himself. He's glad they were pulled into the maze because they were sniffing out humans to hunt them. If he hadn't gotten there fast enough, they would have found Somi almost immediately. Suddenly, the system blared, warning Sewell that more than half of his ghouls have been wiped out by the goblins. Seal pushes Somi alone into the lift and says he has to find the rest of the goblins. After sending her away, he examines the sphere and sees the Red Goblin King taking on a horde of ghouls alone. And though Sho almost sends him to the labyrinth boss, he stops himself in fear that the Goblin King might win and become too dangerous to deal with. So, he steps into the maze to face it on his own. As soon as he steps inside, Sayo is shocked to find piles of dead ghouls scattered everywhere. He then tosses a few blocks across the map to block the Goblin King and stop his rampage, then tricks him into charging straight at himself. The moment the Goblin King arrives, he swings wildly at Soul, promising to end his life, but Sayo easily sidesteps the blows without even breaking a sweat. As he weaves through the attacks, Seol feels a brand new power coursing through him, a stark reminder of how much he has changed since he woke up. He stepped into the maze mainly to try out his new tricks, leaving the rest to the ghouls. Now that Soul has grown so strong, he knows he can take care of things by himself. While the Goblin King keeps charging, Soul drives his blade into the monster's wrist, but the beast wrenches free and hits Seal instead, causing Soul to grin and thank the goblin for the distraction since the creature's hand is now broken, allowing Seal to mock the king who can no longer use it. Besides, he thanked the goblin for giving him a chance to try out a new trick by relentlessly taunting the creature with empty insults. But unfortunately, the goblin was too strong to be moved by such weak words. So Seol steps up his game, and it finally starts paying off. The Goblin King gets angry and breathes hot air when Seo calls him a coward. Furious, he rushes straight to Soul to catch him, but Soul just keeps looking forward to testing his bet. Just as the Goblin King reaches for him, Soul throws a device that freezes the villain solid. With a smug grin, Seol waves goodbye and triggers a spike trap from the ceiling that instantly squashes the goblin into a bloody mess. Even though he spent 20 gold, that's about 2 million, to set up the trap, he is very happy with his investment. The effect is so powerful that he feels guilty whenever anyone gets caught up in it. Just then, the system told him he had leveled up again and that the goblin pack he defeated with the King of Labyrinth skill had been added to the labyrinth. Afterward, heads go back to the hotel, where Lihan scolds him for walking in alone. Lihan asks if Soul fought the goblins alone, but Sol plays dumb and says he hit his head. But Lihan doesn't believe him because the police told him the goblins disappeared after Sol walked into the hotel, and since So has no plan to share the truth, he just playfully asks Lihan to buy him some meat in exchange. Just then, Shongen, the boss from Hanul Guild, bursts in to talk to them. Lihan nods in agreement, and while Shongen sincerely thanks them for helping the guild clear the dungeon mess, Sayo and Lihan are upset that he acted like the whole guild did the work. Shongen tells them to keep quiet about the incident because their guild doesn't want the public to know, and he promises to pay for the hotel's damages while warning that bad news about their guild could scare people. He even promises to give a big gift to the rescue team, and although Sol is furious, he knows the man is right because guild hunters are much stronger than the weak dankers in the Bureau of Hunters. Because of this, people trust the guild and believe it holds the power to keep them safe. But CO hates how guilds use people's trust to get away with anything, and even though he wants to fight it, he knows he can't change the broken system. He wouldn't let it go that way, so he tapped the shoulder with enough force to show he meant business. So he gives a tired smile and agrees to the request, hoping to keep the whole thing quiet and avoid any unwanted attention. He knows that if he blows it up, the hunters will just bury the mess. But he won't let the Hanul Guild walk away clean, so he demands they donate 10 billion to the rescue team, planning to drain them dry since they'll be cleaning up the mess they made. He presses his shoulder and asks if he can match the offer. Xiong is shocked by what he hears, but he's so terrified he can't say a word. After finishing up the dungeon, he gets 2 days off and heads to the park to finally relax. He felt so proud that he solved the trouble without losing anyone and even tricked the Hanul Guild into giving him a huge pile of money. The only catch is that his coworkers are staring at him with lots of questions, wondering how he took down a pack of red goblins by himself. But Sayo doesn't want to tell them anything to avoid drawing too much attention. Sewell worries that if the world found out about his secret deeds, the guilds would take notice, so he decides to spend his vacation quietly fixing up the labyrinth instead. First, he figures out how much gold it will cost to fix the broken walls and bring the monsters back to life, since the maze doesn't have its own money and just uses the universal gold that hunters use. After doing the math, Seal realizes the price is a staggering 53 gold, worth 5.3 million in real money, or double her entire monthly salary. Even though it costs a fortune, he goes ahead with it because he already has about 80 gold in his wallet. Just as Soil is finishing up, Young Hai from the monitoring team calls him on the phone, which really makes Soil angry. He snaps at her to get to the point since he's supposed to be on vacation, but Jonia fires back that his idea of relaxing is probably just chilling in the park, so she tells him to use his seeker skills to help her track someone down. But then the line went dead, and Jungi realized Sayo had hung up on her. Jungi is so shocked he can't believe the nerve shaking inside him. Right after hanging up, Sayo instantly forgets the call and dives back into his thoughts about the labyrinth. He chooses to save some gold rather than resurrect every monster in the labyrinth, trusting that he can step in to handle things himself whenever the time is right. While he is still thinking about which plan is better, his phone rings again and gets on his nerves. So takes the call, orders Yunga to track the person herself since that's her job, but she begs him to save a damsel in distress and even offers to buy him beef to win him over. And while he isn't really interested in playing the heroic prince, the promise of beef does catch his eye, so Jangi seals the deal by promising he'll agree once he hears the name of the person she wants him to track, and when Sheila asks who it is. Young Hai reveals it's Tan, which instantly sparks his curiosity. Given how impressive Tyson is, Zul eagerly agrees to Jonai's challenge to meet him and soon finds himself at a spot watching old geysers play Korean chess. Even though Sol had never met Tan face-to-face, he could still follow Tan's powerful dark red aura to him, a glowing sign that only the strongest awakeners have, and that makes them impossible to miss from far away. Peering closely at him to see if this scrappy old geyser is really the legendary Tan, Shoei is spotted by his game partner and asked to share some Korean chess advice, so he steps in to help with his next move. Sho begins to offer advice to the old man, but his sixth sense suddenly warns him of danger before he can finish speaking. Just as Tan lunges to slam his chess piece into him, Soil slips out of the way and lets the heavy weapon crash into a tree instead. The other old men rushed away to get a few shots off for the gram. As Tan yells at Sol for being too curious, the attack only proves to him that this man is truly the legendary figure he was sent to find. Tan is one of the 5 top hunters in Korea, known for turning whatever he holds into a deadly weapon. Just as Tan was about to make another move, John Jia cut him off, and when Tan asked Yoi if he worked for the monitoring department, Yoi revealed he was actually a seeker from rescue. Tan gives a bit of praise, but calls him arrogant, while Soy happily accepts the compliment and gets even more pumped up. John Jia says she's been looking for Tan because his class is starting, so he goes back with her while she asks Seo how he found him when everyone else couldn't. Seo smirks and tells her he's very capable. After getting ready to go, He stops when Tan insists they follow him to see if Sayo has any real skill beyond his loud words. At the trainee gathering, Tan performs a quick demo to show that every Awakener has a limit, meaning a C-rank hunter will always stay C-rank. However, Tan tells them the system can be tweaked by their own will, and that since martial arts can't be measured in numbers, their strength grows with their weapon skills. As he pumps up the crowd with a motivational speech, Seol zones out, longing only to return to studying his labyrinth. Suddenly, Tan barks at Shu, who's standing next to Seol, asking how long he's been training, to which Shu replies it's been 4 months under Tan, revealing he's one of the rare B-rank hunters in the monitoring department. Tan praises his talent and asks what he believes is needed to truly master the sword. Shu answered with determined strength, knowing that true power comes from understanding your own skills. Tan takes a moment to gather his thoughts before finally asking the question to Seol. Instead of thinking about it, Seol just tells him that having the will to use the weapon is all that matters. A crowd of people scoffs at his foolish answer and clearly prefers Shu's reply, while also mocking him for not even being a trainee in their department. Tan then points out that Seol answered too casually and asks him if he is really sure about his answer. So he was sure that Tezen was sharp enough to see right through him. Tan calls Seol out for his careless attitude, yet still declares his answer right. Shu isn't happy to hear the news, and Seo is even more confused, but he still thanks Tezen. Sun snaps at Tan, refusing to accept the choice since Sayo isn't even a trainee like him. Seo looks lost by Seiyu's childish outburst, but Tan steps in to say that anyone with the right skills can take the stage. So he announces that Seol will get the same chance to pass the test as Seiyu, with everyone simply needing to prove their answers. Seiyu takes up the challenge, but Seol turns down the offer right away. But Tan steps in to change his mind, offering to take anyone who passes the test as his own disciple. The idea of training under an S-rank powerhouse immediately grabs Yo-Yo's attention. Getting stronger isn't just about power. It's also your ticket to climbing higher. Tan notices Seol is exactly where he needs to be, so he asks if the offer is tempting. He pauses for a moment before finally saying yes to Tan's offer. Afterward, they head to the test site where Tan tells them to use the skill he's teaching them to smash an ether stone, promising to take any disciple who breaks off the most. Getting the rare ether stone from the temple is a huge challenge because only those with great magic power can break it. Then he starts to wonder what Teisen means by passing down a skill, while Shu, driven to win, pumps up the crowd for their support. While the crowd roars for Seiyu, Seo decides he has to seize this moment no matter what happens. Before sharing his skill, Teisen warns them that they'll be immediately disqualified if they feel nothing at all. Just as he starts passing the skill to Sayo and Shu, a terrifying red aura suddenly crashes onto them. Seo's system immediately spots the aura, but before he can even understand it, Teisen's powerful presence nearly knocks the wind right out of him. But he refuses to quit, pushing forward until the very end to earn that skill. Just as he begins to fade out, a sudden calm washes over Seal as he sees the spear Teisen taught him, and the system confirms he has gained the Serene Mind skill and mastered the Dragon King's spearmanship. Seeing the look on Si and Soi's faces, Tan tells them they've got what it takes to claim their inheritance. Usually, others feel nothing, but before they can learn the skill, they faint from the shock. Afterward, he asks the boys who wants to go first, and Shu steps up right away to take the lead. Seiyu is so focused on leaving everyone in awe that he never even lets Seo get the chance to challenge him. As he readies his strike at the stone, he mutters a curse at Seol, blaming him for using money to get ahead. He can't believe a useless Durank could take on Tan's power, so Shu cuts the ether stone with his sword to prove he is better. The crowd gasped at Shu's incredible power, convinced his amazing talent was being wasted away in the boring monitoring department. Tan realizes that Shu has finally learned to wield the Dragon King's sword like a master. After showing off his skills, Shu mocks Seol, reminding him that he's just a junior and needs to know his place. But Seol shoots back at him for his inferiority complex and his constant need to prove himself. Before things get out of hand, Tan tells the boys to stop and lets Seol take his turn. So Seol stepped up to the front, thinking he only fought back at Seiyu's bossy attitude. And even though he knew he wasn't as strong, he kept his spirits up because he believed the fight was about will, not power. He takes this test to show that his answer is right, just like Teisen had already confirmed back then. Even though he spoke with a casual tone, Seol was completely certain of his answer. So he pauses to figure out why his answer is the right one. Just as Seol recalls the hunter who saved his life, he finally finds his own path, to become just like him, just like that hunter. So, turned into a rescue hunter to pass on the hope he once felt when he was saved. To make this happen, he realizes he has to get stronger than he is right now. With that thought in mind, Sayo pours all his power into his spear, igniting the Dragon Fire Heart-Piercer skill and unleashing a massive flame that completely destroys the Ether Stone, leaving the entire crowd and Seiyu utterly stunned. As CEO shuffled back to his spot, he whispered an awkward apology to Seiyu, claiming a junior had snatched his place. Taysen praises CEO for unlocking his weapon's true strength, proving that only those who truly know themselves can do it. Tan declares Sayo to be his new disciple, and as the crowd cheers for him, Sayo thanks him gratefully, while far away, Yanni gets trapped by a group of bullies led by a boy named Jintai. The blonde bully mocks Yonhee, claiming she looks this way because she was too nosy to help a friend. Yonhee slapped Jintai for bullying her friend, which only made him angrier and pushed her friend to choose death to escape the bullies. Jintai then laughs at Yanhai, pointing out that her friend is still fighting for her life in the hospital. Yanhee glares in rage, yet only fuels Jintai's excitement. He slaps her hard, but a B-rank hunter jumps in to stop him right away. Jintai tells his friends they're on their way and makes sure to warn them to keep an eye on Yonhee so he doesn't slip away. He even tells the hunter to follow them, inviting him to take them somewhere quiet so they can play with Yonhee as much as they want. As Jonga heads back to work, she praises him for taking on a powerful S-rank hunter as his teacher. It turns out Tan asked him to pick a weapon, so he chose a spear, which Janghai doubted until Soy explained that while it looked plain to her, his system had already spotted it as the legendary evolution spear known as Loga. The spear shifts into new shapes to match the user's will, but Junkie is already grumbling that it's past her shift time, only for CEO Yul to laugh at her for being tired after doing nothing all day in the monitoring department. Jonia gets so angry she tries to jump at him, but CEO Yul easily pushes her back with one hand while he spots the commotion ahead. A worn-out woman begs the security guard for a chance to see Sayo, but he holds her back from stepping inside. He asks her to call him, but she says she already did and there is still no answer from Seal. Suddenly, CEO cuts through their arguing to ask what's wrong, then grabs her shirt as she breaks down and reveals that Yoni got dragged to the yellow belt because he is actually her son, Yonhei. Yo gets instantly angry and demands to know who did it. Inside the yellow belt, one of Jintai's minions worries if it's safe to be there, but Jintai reassures them that it's fine because they have a B-rank hunter watching out for them. He boasts about wanting to see who wins if Yoni fights a monster, then mocks her fear by telling her the monsters for the yellow belt are too weak to hurt her. Terrified, Yoni instantly flees, convinced that Jintai is so crazy he'd make her fight a monster. Yoni sprints forward, desperate to get away from that crazy guy. But right before she could escape the prison, Jintai ordered the hunter to stop her. The hunter uses his leg to trip Yonhee and send her crashing to the ground. But when she screams for help, Blondie tells her to stop shouting since they're the only two people around. The hunter spots a watcher in the shadows and yells for everyone to back off, but Blondie ignores the warning because he was told the monsters are weak, and he becomes the first to fall, leaving the hunter rushing forward to block the stingers while Jintai stares in horror at Blondie's empty body. The hunter orders him to run back the way they came, but Jintai is frozen with fear and asks who attacked them. The hunter explains that they're stinghawks, a huge kind of monster hornet. Meanwhile, Sayo has reached the yellow belt and calls out to thank Jongmin, who helped him along the way. Young, a fighter, was the first to track down Yonggi, so thanked him for that, but Jongmin says he was only responding to a missing persons report. Even though he warns So against going in alone, Yongmin still tells him to be careful, but Sayo isn't too worried about his safety. After the call, Sul looks around the now miserable yellow belt, but it wasn't always like that. The yellow belt was sealed off after the area became uncontrollable due to a dungeon break. Even though these creatures aren't strong, they're so clever that they're still very hard to defeat. Sho confirms this since he already killed a couple of them upon entering and sees that even though they seem weaker, they would still be too strong for an unawakened Yonhee to survive, so he rushes off to find her. But soon, the hornets start attacking him all over again. Instead of fighting them himself, Soil decides to push them into the labyrinth before time runs out. He asks them to call all their friends, but when they show up, he gets nervous because there's so many of them. As the sting operation kicks off, Sayo bolts for his life, but gets trapped by a swarm of hornets that keeps coming back despite his best efforts, showing him he's in way over his head. That's because the monsters inside the maze are disappearing fast. If he lets in more hornets, the labyrinth might give way, and Sayo knows he can't fight the ones outside by himself. So, he makes a bold move to change everything. He quickly traps all the hornets outside in a glowing sphere. Then he throws a huge pond of water into the maze. Right when the hornets are about to take over the maze, they suddenly freeze, sensing something fast charging toward them. Just as they are about to move, a huge torrent of water bursts into the maze and drowns them, leaving So's heart heavy as he watches his tiny kingdom get ruined, knowing the repair bill will break him. He was worried about the high cost, which is why he hesitated to try this method in the first place. He's relieved the tool worked and finally stopped the hornets from chasing him outside. While Jintai and his team struggle to survive a dangerous temple run, he is getting fed up with his useless B-rank hunter. The hunter warns Jintai that he can't catch all the bugs by himself, but that advice just makes Jintai even angrier. They've already lost their way out, leaving him stuck with a spineless so-called B-rank hunter. And to make things even worse, the second henchman, who looked like he was dressed up as a Little Red Riding Hood, gets stabbed by the hornet stingers pretty fast. Right then, Jintai finally realized he'd made a huge mistake by joining the yellow belt just to have fun. As a hornet dives at them, Jintai, just like every other selfish jerk, grabs Yonhee to use her as a shield. Luckily, someone knocks out the hornet before it can hurt Yonhee, but Jintai growls into the dark and asks who it is, until So Yul snaps out of his anger and reveals he is a bureau hunter. Then, furious, he asks Jintai if he was the one who pulled Yonhee into the yellow belt, while Yonhee, already on the verge of tears, realizes Sayo has come to save her and throws herself into his arms. Before they can fully reunite, Jintai steps in and offers to pay anything just to see how to get out of the yellow belt zone. Yonhee tells Yul to ignore the piece of trash, but So Yul ignores her, his face darkening instantly. He apologizes to her, but before she can ask why, he knocks her out. Sayo gently lays her down, promises to clean up before going home, and tells a shocked Jintai that he is about to do something she shouldn't see. So he slams his spear into the ground and stretches his fist for what's coming. But Jintai, still oblivious to his trouble, keeps talking back until he plays his famous, "Do you know who I am?" card, only for Sayo to laugh and tell him that his face is well known among bureau hunters. And then Co drops the bombshell that Jintai is actually the son of Bumjin, a judge on the Supreme Court. Apparently, Jintai has a terrible reputation for bullying, stealing, and all kinds of crazy crimes. Thanks to his dad's help, Jint always finds a way to fix his mistakes, and since Sayo knows about his bad grades, Jint feels brave enough to stand before Sol and demand a solution. Sayo kicks Jint in the shin, making him stumble and fall from the sharp pain, but instead of letting him rest, Sayo grabs him and starts punching him, joking that he has to pay him back because that's his favorite fun. After a few more hits, the hunter jumps in to stop Sayo, but Sol quickly sidesteps the swing and releases Jint, knowing his bodyguard has dealt with the hornets. While Jintai jumps for joy and starts talking nonsense again, convinced that his useless hunter, who couldn't even handle a swarm of weak hornets, will easily take on a mere D-rank hunter. Sayo zips around too fast for the hunter to touch, while Sul is already angry since he only wanted to give them a warning. While the hunter tries to catch him, he chooses to put the others down completely and calls it self-defense. As the fight goes on, Sayo unleashes his strongest moves, leaving the hunter confused since bureau hunters are supposed to be the weakest, yet Sayo's power seems to outshine everyone's, making him doubt the true nature of ranks and even wondering if Sol is really what he claims to be. Even so, the hunter believes he can turn the tide, knowing his weapon is just a spear. He rushes forward to close the gap, believing that if he gets close enough, he can bring him down. But reality wasn't what he expected, because the very moment he got close enough, someone grabbed his hand as if they had been waiting for him all along. So then he punches him straight in the face, giving him a much-needed facelift that instantly knocks the hunter out. Jintai is terrified and frantically calls for help, only to find a hunter spirit has gone on vacation, which makes him doubt his own status, while Sayo watches in shock as the spirit effortlessly takes down a B-rank hunter. He realizes his new power from those hornets must have pushed his strength past the level of a B-rank hunter. Shiol's smirk only makes Jintai more annoyed, so the hunter decides to stop acting like a wimp and grabs a stone, foolishly thinking he can do what a whole B-rank hunter couldn't. But as he charges forward, Sayo calmly swings a spear to knock Jintai down and asks how it feels to be on the receiving end, telling him his previous victim suffered far worse than this. Jintai just shrugs it off, telling Yoi to toughen up because he has no money and no power, and that's simply how the world works. Realizing Jintai won't change, Co thinks the world would be better off without a hopeless piece of trash like him. Jintai feels a little scared, but Co isn't going to raise a finger against him. He grabs Yonhee and tells Jintai he's leaving him to the hungry yellow belt wolves. Then, as sinister eyes appear from the shadows and the monsters pounce, Jintai frantically begs for the power to control them, but it never comes while Sul quietly carries Yonhee away. After moving past the yellow belt, Yonhee was happily reunited with her family, and they all let tears of joy fall. Youngmin tells Sayo that the officials who helped Jintai join the elite group have been caught and removed from their jobs, and he thinks the city might get a bit wild for a while. Just as he had guessed, the incident sparked huge anger while the officials were being punished. Even Guntai's father had to step down from his high court job, to help fix the mess. After what happened, Sayo gets a system mission to catch the Queen Hornet in the Yellow Belt before 30 days are up. After finishing his mission, he finds out he'll get a Stinger Dagger, 100 gold, and Royal Jelly from the Queen. But if he fails, he'll take a huge hit to his power against insects. And Sayo remembers seeing the Queen Hornet right as he left the Yellow Belt. Sayo can't stop smiling because he's thrilled for the adventure, even though he knows she's tough to catch since her swarm guards her. He realizes the Queen must be incredibly powerful since her workers nearly tore his maze apart. Soil tells Li-Han he's heading out early to get to something else. But when Li-Han asks if he finished his paperwork, Seal freezes for a heartbeat before practically disappearing. With only a month left before the Queen Hornet's quest ends, Seal realizes he must get ready because the depleted swarm will quickly reclaim its lost territory. Seo arrives just as Tan scolds him for being late and orders him inside to start training right away, and once he changes into his new uniform, he finally accepts that he is now Tan's student. But the old man warns him not to rely on this advantage, since 2 other senior disciples are still above him and the training ahead will be so intense it might crush him. So Tan takes Sayo into the training room, where he meets Gunsu, one of Taison's senior disciples. Sitting in the room is the jawbone of an iron monster, a one-of-a-kind relic that can be found nowhere else on Earth. Taison touches the scars across his back and admits that the monster nearly took his life when it first attacked him. Tan walks over to the jawbone and tells Seo that this will be his very first task. Tan grips the handles on the jawbones, rips them apart with all his might, then lets go and sighs that the jawbone is still stubborn as ever. Ganu claps for his master, praising him for always being such an incredible man, while Sul stares in awe at the man's huge, ripped muscles. Taison asks Sul to try moving the massive jawbone, and though Sul worries he can't lift it as well as the B-rank hunter Taison because he's just below that rank, he still gives it a go, only to fail completely and leave Taison shocked that the giant bone wouldn't budge at all. So he refuses to believe it and keeps struggling with the jawbone, but Tan insists that the training will build his strength and that he must keep trying until he succeeds, leaving him with the warning that no next stage will happen until he finally pries the jaw open. Deep down, Gunsu isn't impressed and decides that Seo is just a Nippo baby. The next day, as Junu heads to the training hall, he remembers that he has pushed himself harder than anyone else over the last 2 years to prove he deserves to be a direct disciple. But in the end, it's Seo who lands the spot, and Yinu isn't happy because a random guy from the bureau got it instead of him. Yinsu feels it's unfair that he's been sidelined after all the hard work he's put in. When Gunsu steps into the training hall, he is stunned to find Sayo already scrubbing it, and even though Sayo calmly reminds him to speak up and that he is the rookie, Gunsu can't help but marvel at how spotless the gym is, only to walk away and warn Sayo that his hard work makes the rest of them look bad. Sayo is stunned and asks Gunsu if there truly needs to be a strict order for things like this. Sayo tells him that he took the time to do it himself, insisting that being a direct disciple doesn't mean he'll let others do the work since everyone is there to get stronger. Gunsu just stares at Seo, shaking his head in disbelief at how annoying the guy is. Gunsu watches as Sul keeps showing up to training for 2 whole weeks, staying far later than anyone else just to practice. Gunsu is shocked to see that his own student, who trains with everything he has yet treats everyone with kindness, is actually the kind of person he wishes he could be. After a while, Sayo nearly managed to pull the jaw open, but he failed once more. His hands are covered in blood from gripping the jaw handle so tightly and often. Right then, Gnu stepped over to hand him a bottle of water. To everyone's shock, Gunsu warns him not to push too hard, and he is stunned that the old man has finally stopped acting so formal. She grabs the bottle from him just as the loud horn sounds in the distance, even though he's still drinking. Sayo asks what it is, and Gunsu explains that it's the signal telling the Overcross Guild to head into a nearby dungeon. Sayo is shocked to see the guild still open so late, but Gunsu explains that Overcross never sleeps, and Sul is surprised Junu knows this until Junsu admits he used to work there himself. The next morning, the Overcross Guild stepped out of the dungeon, having just finished their mission to catch a steel-blooded orc. One hunter wonders if hunting monsters like this is really legal, but his teammate admits it's against the rules, noting that while they get paid in cash, selling the captured orc on the black market would bring in 12 billion anyway. One of them carries an orc necklace, and the instant the orc lays eyes on it, he snaps. The 2 fools start mocking the necklace, and even decide to toss it away. But that just makes the orc go truly crazy. While CEO and his team wrap up a daring rescue, he's already packing to head back to the association. His team leader invites him to dinner, but he has to decline because his master needs him to watch over the other disciples while he is gone. Suddenly, the alarm blares, calling for backup because a 3-star boss monster meant for transport has escaped and is now tearing through everything. It's a shock to find the chaos happening right at the Korean Martial Arts Association, where an orc is already tearing things apart. It smashed everything in its way, leaving Gano battered and completely helpless. Gunsu stares into a mirror that holds every single thing that has happened, reminding him that he has always believed he was a genius. He also thought it was right for them to use the sub-guilds, because he believed that the strong were allowed to do whatever they wanted. But it was on the day his own men abandoned him to die that he finally saw how wrong he had been, realizing he was just another replaceable part in a cold, machine-like world. Ganu also learns that the world is a mean and broken place. Even though things are hard, he knows there are still kind people out there because someone saved him, so he's trying to make the world a little better in their honor. Instead of quitting, Ganu gets to his feet, screams at the orc that 2 years of hell forged him to survive, and points his struggling half-blade right at him. Even so, he realizes he must stay in front of the orc and keep its attention on him so his friends can get away safely. Just then, the orc lunges with a punch, but Gnu is too exhausted to dodge, already imagining his head flying off when Seol steps in to block the blow and tells Jun-Soo he has done enough. Seol pushes Gnu to let him handle the rest, so he turns on a labyrinth and drags the orc right inside. As soon as they step into the maze, the orc doesn't waste a second and starts chasing Seol around. Seo never expected the orc to be that aggressive and scary. He can't believe that the orc just took on the entire Overcross guild and still has so much energy left. The orc dashes through the twisting halls like a boyfriend on a wild date, smashing walls in his reckless rush. So finally stops to admit he can't fight the orc alone, so he frees the red goblins to swarm and overwhelm the beast while he waits for a chance to strike. But the orc is so strong that he tears through the goblins like paper, leaving his boss to watch helplessly as his minions get shredded by the monstrous beast. So he is furious about the damage the orc is causing to his labyrinth walls, even though he worked very hard to fix them. He sees that the goblins can't make the hole he needs, so even though using his powerful monster feels too risky, he knows he has no choice now. Sayo then calls forth the boss of the maze, Saori, to clash with the orc in a wild battle. Kaori fights back the orc, buying Seol just enough time to jump and strike at its head. He drives his spear deep into the orc's head, but it isn't enough to stop the monster, who still has the strength to crush Kaori. Now that the Kaori are beaten, the system tells Seo he can't respawn yet. Filled with rage that an orc killed his labyrinth boss, Sayo snaps and activates the Hall of Steel Traps. Seo shoots arrows into the orc and slashes its leg with his spear, causing it to crash down so he can trigger a ceiling spike trap that crushes the monster flat, and he praises his own clever plan for stacking all these traps just in case the orc turned bad. Right then, a warning flashes that the maze is crumbling fast at 72%, vanishing if it drops to 60%, all monsters will be wiped out, and he grips his head in frustration over losing the boss. Yet he knows the maze was his only shield against death. Suddenly, the ground began to tremble, leaving him wondering what had just happened. Before he can react, the orc breaks right through the floor, looking far more terrifying than before. The system warns that the orc is making its last stand and is very strong, so Sol, knowing the labyrinth can't hold much longer, decides to head back outside because he thinks the association has already gotten everyone out. He waits until he has room to fight the orc, while Ganu wanders around lost, trying to find Sol. Just then, the gate swung wide open right next to him. Before he can even figure out what's going on, he sees SCU and the orc fighting. As Sol trades blows with the orc, he notices something odd. He can actually keep up with the giant brute, making him wonder if the orc has finally run out of steam. However, he quickly shakes off that worry when he feels his own strikes hitting harder than ever, realizing that although the orc's blows are heavier, his strength and body can now take them, proving that his 2 weeks of training truly paid off. He feels like he's falling apart, yet power surges through him as his bones grow stronger. So he sprints at the orc, driving his spear home with a grin because he's finally enjoying the fight. Before he can finish thinking, the orc snatches his spear and slams him against a distant wall, leaving Seo coughing blood as he realizes the brute is actually smart for taking his weapon since Seo's hardened blood would be too tough to pierce without it. Just then he turns around and spots the jawbone behind him, sparking an idea in his mind. Just as Gnu charges the orc to buy time, he shouts that they need to grab a weapon while there's still a chance. Before Gunsu can even finish his sentence, the orc slams him to the ground, and then he dashes toward the orc, shouting to Jun-Soo that he's already found a weapon. With the orc focused on Junu, So seizes his moment to snatch the jawbone, knowing it will take every ounce of strength he has left. So feels a sudden rush of power and grabs hold of the jawbone. He yanks the thing open and lets the lever drop from So's head. The giant jawbone snaps shut on the orc's head and cuts off his neck with surprising ease. Just as the orc crashes to the ground, the system flashes a message to Sewell. He has found a rare treasure, a demonic dagger. Sewell thanks the orc for helping him overcome his final training block, and now that the beast is defeated, CEO rushes to Junu to snap him out of his fainting spell before Zoil teases the recovering hero that he's still got 9 lives left. To Gunsu, the figure he sees is an angel rescuing him, but when he tells Seol that he is that savior, Sayo just laughs and teases him, reminding him that no one else would ever take care of him if not him. Despite telling Gunsu to relax since the game was up, the next day, news crews swarmed the entire building. Soon after, Overcross's director Yun arrives and steals all the attention, with reporters demanding his side of the story and others pressing him on whether he admits the whole thing was an illegal monster transport. After much thought, Junin finally steps forward to tell everyone that he wants to offer his apologies to the victims. He explains that the steel-blooded orc is a monster so valuable for study that they risked it all just to donate him to the Bureau. Jun Wuan then tells the reporters there is nothing more to say, but he promises to fully cooperate with the investigation by the monitoring department. Suddenly, a reporter spots Seal in the back and yells for everyone to look, causing the crowd to rush over and demand an explanation on how a D-rank hunter like him could defeat an orc. But before he can answer, his team leader drags him away, insisting they have to get back to work. Suddenly, one of the reporters shouts that the Bureau isn't answering the question of what happened. He adds that the Bureau was set up to keep tabs on big guilds and stop things like this from happening, but since they failed to do their job, he says they share the blame. CO's boss tells him to ignore the biased YouTuber who takes money from big guilds, but since they are playing dirty, CO decides to make his move by walking up to the live reporter and screaming at him to feel good about getting paid to work for those big guilds. He points at Junin and tells everyone that the Bureau is the one constantly cleaning up the messes they leave behind. Everyone was so stunned by what they heard that not even Junin could find a single word to say. So the boss had to pull him away before he could cause any more trouble. Junin asks his assistant if Seal is the same guy who was rude to him before, and the assistant confirms it. Jun only gets angrier and orders his assistant to do anything it takes to crush them. The next day, Li-Han is summoned to a meeting where he learns that the video he posted yesterday has gone viral. Li-Hai argued to the officials that he shouldn't be punished because there are many other articles that praise him instead. However, Hyunahuk, the head of the monitoring department, insists the punishment must happen, while Li-Han argues it should fall on Overcross or their managers, leading Hyun to angrily challenge Li-Han's claim that they are incompetent before the elephant in the room reminds them all to calm down. The man asks Li-Han if it's true that CO saves everyone, and Li-Han nods and says yes. So the man declares that Seol is a talent they can't afford to lose, since relying on big guilds won't save their bureau's dignity. Hyun asks the strange, commanding man if he has a plan, and the man calmly sips his tea, saying it's only fair to play along since the guilds have decided to make things funny. It turns out the man is Park Kwang-soo, the bureau director, who later sends an invitation to CO Yul. Yul heads to the office and sits down when Kwang-soo tells him they have something important to discuss. Kwang-gu pours tea for them, then asks CEO how it tastes, only for CEO to tease him by saying it's so good he should open a cafe. Kwang-soo felt a wave of joy when he heard the news, and he eagerly turned to CEO to ask what rank he'd land if he took the test again. So he replies that he can't be certain, but he's sure it won't be his current rank. Kanga nods in agreement, telling him that he has recently done things that no D-rank person could ever do. But Kanga warns him that things are tough for them too, since people are trying to dig up dirt on him. Deep down, he's already worried because he can't figure out where the director is taking this, and now he fears the director is trying to trick him into revealing secrets just because he's helping out. Kanggu is a seasoned politician, and that experience is exactly how he has kept his job for so long. Before heading to the office, Li-Han told Sayo to be honest with Kwang-soo and stop playing games because messing around could end up hurting him. Yeol knows he's listened to Li-Han's advice this whole time, but he thinks it's a bad idea to bring up the labyrinth. Just then, Kwang-soo tells him to relax, saying he isn't going to ask how he became strong yet. Kwang-soo tells Yeol that right now, the Bureau needs his strength more than anything else. And without beating around the bush, he tells Yeol that he's being sent to the countryside. Just as Jun Wuan is released from duty after the investigation ends, he thanks his contact Shu and asks for his opinion on Sayo. But Shu shrugs, saying he knows nothing because they work in different departments and questions why Jun cares so much about a simple rescue worker. Junin snaps back, calling Sul a pest that's driving him crazy. Shu questions Junin if his plan to send someone to the countryside stems from hate, but Junin warns him to keep it down, insisting he just wants a piece of his own reflection. Right in the middle of their talk, someone suddenly pops out from behind them to ask if they're almost done, and Jun Wuan tries to look cool by telling Su that fate seems to keep pulling them together. Yunnan shares with, so that he's heard the news about Seoul being sent away to the countryside. He picked his ear clean, blew on it, and casually told Yunwan that he already knew the news even though the official notice hadn't arrived, prompting CEO Yule to tease him about stalking before he assured them it was just a short 6-month assignment. Jinyuan teases Seol for being such an optimist, pointing out that since the Bureau only sends out top-level leaders, what he's heard doesn't even look like a real transfer. While Junin keeps complaining, Cuts interrupts him to reveal that even his spy, Shu, hasn't heard the big news yet, so Cuts decides to drop it himself and announces that he's been promoted from 8th to 6th grade, making him a senior officer thanks to a double jump. Sayo and Junwan are stunned by the news, but Sayo quickly teases Junin about not looking thrilled by his promotion, while Junin reluctantly admits he is happy for him, yet wonders if the Bureau just gives out promotions to anyone. So he replies, saying this just shows the Bureau wants to hold on to its talent, and he's pretty certain the boss is furious that things didn't go his way. This sparks Junin to unleash his aura in a desperate attempt to crush the threat, but he quickly adjusts his strategy to match the danger. Shu steps in and tells Junin it's time for him to go. Junin apologized, saying he'd just been lost in thought and was ready to head off. As Sejul walks away, he leans in to share one last piece of advice with him. CEO tells Jun Wuan with a smirk that moving him around was a bad idea, since his duty as a rescue hunter stays the same no matter where he's sent. And as CEO walks away, Jun Wuan finally snaps and punches the wall so hard his knuckles sting. Kwang Su reassures CEO that what looks like an exile is just a temporary 6-month assignment, where he must prove his worth to keep enemies away. During the meeting, Kwang Su snaps Sayo back to reality with a gentle nudge, and after Sayo apologizes and thanks the director for watching out for him, he shares a quiet wish to be sent not to the countryside he was heading to, but to a place where his help is truly needed. Kangoo is completely blown away by what he hears, because he never expected him to act that way in such a situation. Kangoo couldn't help but admit the dude is something special, and soon his shot co-workers learned he's now a senior officer, leaving Li Han to calmly confirm the news as the department head who knows everything. When they ask Li Han how to handle rescues without CEO, he simply tells them to just do their jobs as usual. With only a week left before he leaves, Li Han suggests they call Seoul to see if he's coming to the team dinner that night, so the yellow-headed guy decides to take a shot and reaches out to CEO. Surprisingly, he answers the call, but CEO warns him that she knows what he's up to right now. The guy asks what it is, and CEO says he's removing a wasp nest, but he's actually rushing to the dungeon to finish a mission that ends in 72 hours because if he fails, he'll be half as strong against bug monsters. Once the call ended, Seoul gazed at the queen's nest and saw that it was spawning countless monsters, but he wasn't too worried because he could still get away. He springs into action, racing off into the distance with one goal, to kill the queen. Suddenly, insect monsters called Sweep fit its attack and block him, so Seoul has to fight them right away. He suddenly sees that the queen has hidden a whole army of monsters, waiting to jump on him. These stinger blasts fire like bullets, but since they burn so much energy, the queen rarely uses them, leaving Sayo to wonder if she had them loaded all along. Even so, he knows he can't afford to wait, because eventually he'll find himself trapped right in the middle of everything. But before that, Sayo opens the labyrinth to suck in the insect monsters so he can trap and handle them. Now that the maze is open, he thinks he can easily find his way to the nest. But then, the bug monsters switch their tricks all of a sudden. Yul is confused by what he sees, wondering if they're flying low just to stay out of the sphere's reach. Given all the crazy tricks the monsters have been playing, it's clear the queen monster has been spying on him and writing down his every move. He feels honored that the queen is using her tiny brain power just to kill him, instead of getting angry. Even so, Soil has his own plan. Since he can't respawn the labyrinth monsters right now, he has no choice but to step inside and grab as many as he can before making a quick getaway. Once he gets a chance to talk to the queen himself, he playfully mocks her for hiding and tells her to step outside. Suddenly, he realizes the queen's sin has gone wild, signaling she's doing something important, so he wonders if she's calling the whole swarm and quickly turns on his sixth sense just to be safe. Luckily, he hit the button just in time to dodge the blow that was meant for him. It turns out the queen has been summoning her ultimate weapon, a powerful soldier called Winglash, who is actually an insect monster. The Winglash spins Soil around to make him run the other way, and finally he understands just how badly the queen wants to stop him, since she unleashed a terrifying monster right because of him. So then he dashes at the sphere to catch the Winglash, leaving the queen exposed. Right as he hoped, the sphere grabs the Winglash and holds it tight. As the sphere struggles to drag the Winglash into the maze, the Soil moves in to hunt the helpless queen. Then, suddenly, the wing strikes him once more. He spins around right in time to catch the monster strike. The wing lash slams him to the ground, and Seo finally sees that the beast ripped off its own arm just to break free from the sphere's pull, while the queen shouts encouragement as he struggles beneath her. Seeing how stubborn they are, Seo drags both of them into the labyrinth. Even though it wasn't his perfect plan, he doesn't care because they are now stuck inside his territory. Seo teases them, warning that if they want to stay safe, they better not move. Just as he starts explaining why they shouldn't move, he realizes he's talking to monsters and sounds crazy, so Seo pulls a trap called Steel Rain from his bag that shoots arrows, but the wing lash blocks them all with his wings. Seul is blown away, finally getting it. That's why they call the beast the wing lash. But wing lash isn't safe yet because arrows aren't just coming from the front. Instead, the monster gets torn apart from behind by a swarm of arrows flying at it. He then reminds the queen that her efforts are pointless the moment she steps into his trap-filled domain, built specifically to defeat monsters like her. With their last big weapon gone, they're all that's left standing. Soyeol readies his spear to strike the queen, yet he wisely holds back, knowing her sturdy armor would simply bounce his weapon off and waste his effort. Soyeol turns around to find a weak spot where he can strike the queen down. But the queen holds his strike and shoves him back, leaving him shocked that she won't give up so easily. Even with 3 days left to go, he can't wait until later and wants to finish everything right now. Plus, if he slips out of the maze just because he's bored, it'll look like he's scared of the queen and running away. Seo triggers a trapdoor that breaks off some of the queen's legs. So then, he readies himself to strike the queen down with a mighty martial move. For the first time, he's ready to use a new power against the queen, and he's thrilled because it's such a great opponent. With the queen completely stuck and vulnerable, Seul dashes in with the Crimson Lotus skill, unleashing a massive burst of energy that blasts a huge hole right through her. With this, the queen is vanquished and Seul receives a message celebrating his victory. So he's left gasping for air after using up all his energy to cast the spell. His hand burns, and staring at the pain, he finally admits he's been too weak to stand up to it. But now he knows there is no more running away. Then the system tells him the quest reward has landed right in his inventory. So he decides to check out his rewards and finds a rare poison stinger that can paralyze weak monsters but loses its power against stronger ones. Seul realizes he can use this power in certain situations, but the other reward is what worries Seul the most. The other prize is the Queen's Royal Jelly, a treasure so rare it's hard to find. Once you eat this one-time wonder, your body's mana sensitivity skyrockets, but be warned, there's a nasty price to pay. You remember that using a trap costs lots of magic energy, so it makes sense to build up your supply. So he bites into the royal jelly and swallows it whole, which instantly floods his body with a rush of concentrated energy. The mana is so strong it wants to burst out, but Seo refuses to let it go since he worked hard to gain it. So he learns to match his breathing with the mana's flow to help his blood vessels accept it, which calms the storm and earns him a special constitution called the Myriad Souls Peach Blossom Physique. Seo is thrilled to discover that his body has suddenly become far more sensitive, all thanks to just one piece of royal jelly. Seo looks over his stats and sees that he's gotten a whole lot stronger. Seul feels happy now, knowing the rewards he gets are worth the risk he took to earn them. However, remembering the side effects, Shu chooses to ignore them and focus on the main event, the arrival of the labyrinth monsters, while Seul realizes he needs to restock on eggs since only a few red goblins remain. Right as the system informs him that a beehive counts as one entity and suggests installing the Lake of Decay. You unlock this new trap only after you defeat the queen. If you sink a monster's or awakened being's body into the lake, their power and special features will shift to a specific creature in the labyrinth. If he aims his attack at the rotting lake touching the beehive, every single egg inside will suddenly grow stronger together. Seo dives right in, leaving him to pick which one will become the boss monster. So he finds his choice, and it is the biggest one of all. Seo grins as he calls the boss Vespa and promises to bring him some tasty treats. Later that night, Seul goes out with Yunga just because she asked him to. But Seo and his partner beat her there, and when the guy asks Yo what he's doing, Yo just says he's grabbing food for the kid he's raising. The guy doesn't know what he's talking about and asks if he's trying to raise some kind of exotic pet. It turns out Seo went back to take the rank test because the director made her do it. His co-workers think he's strange for not taking vacations like everyone else, but when he notices the women staring, he jumps on the chance to brag about how handsome he is. Just as Seo was still yelling at Jongi for being late, he suddenly noticed blood running down her nose.